Hi. So you may often find yourself practicing for hours at a time or days on end and find yourself not making as much progress as you'd hoped. You'd probably have tried repeating the same section over and over again, or maybe you practiced metronomes at different BPMs, but that one section isn't still quite working out well. Well, that's okay. I want to express my thoughts on practicing exercises and methods that may potentially help you and also explain why they're useful. I think the pre-exercise to a practice session tends to be pretty heavily underestimated. So when you go out to play a sport or perform heavy lifting at the gym, it almost seems a bit weird to not stretch a little or get your heart rate up before you exercise, especially when we can get increased rates of injuries or inefficient practice sessions if we choose not to. This being the case, why would we not consider a pre-exercise before practicing? And this is different from a warm-up, like practicing scales. I mean before you even pick up the instrument, right? So I have here the third movement. This is the third page of the third movement of the Violin Brahms Sonata number 1, as you can see. And I chose this page specifically because it has certain passages like the start here, or the midsection here, where it's pretty easy to trip up. So I wanted to kind of talk through my thought process on how I would analyze this first part before playing. But before I actually start writing on this sheet, I wanted to start on a blank sheet. So on this blank sheet, I wanted to make a detailed checklist, like as detailed as possible on all of my goals, basically going forward. Let me switch that. So here we have the checklist, obviously. So what are some things that I want to look for as I start this section? What I'm trying to basically accomplish here is, what do I want to accomplish in this first run through? How similar will it be to what I'm hearing it in my head? Because I want to have as clear of an image to what I think it will sound like when I first start playing. That will really cut down on my practice time and also ensure that I don't drill any errors, unnecessary errors that I might accidentally put into my muscle memory by accident. So starting off, obviously we want good intonation. I'll put down good intonation. Good intonation, good phrasing. We want good phrasing. We want to know the direction of where it's going. And let's add just one more. Let's say good contact point. Now these are a bit vague right now, but we can continue to play through this. We can continue to play, and as we play, we can refine this checklist. We can kind of narrow down, add a lot more things. Like we can maybe say, like in measure, like 6, make sure not to play this note sharp or something like that. We can start narrowing down the details a lot more and refine them more. So let's go back here. Let's just go temporarily back to this page. Let's start off with intonation. So when I do intonation, I typically color code my sharps and flats. And so what I mean by that is when I typically play a note that is too flat, for example, let's say for this note, for example, I'll usually just put a little arrow mark like that saying orange, and we'll put it up. So if I think these two notes right here are too sharp each and every time, I'll put 2 orange arrows up like that. And then vice versa, if I think a note is too sharp and I don't want to make that mistake again next time, let's say this note right here, I'll put a little down arrow. So I want these notes here to be flat. So just as an example here. And obviously this is as I'm fine-tuning this section, right? So I want to kind of get the drone out of my instrument as I'm playing this section. I also look for phrasing. So when I look at this beginning phrase, I always ask first, where is this phrase taking me? What's the direction? How long is it? Etc. And this kind of thinking not only allows phrasing like hypermeter to come out more, but also makes the line sound more complete, like you're reading a line from a story. You obviously wouldn't pronounce each word in a story individually, right? Like, once upon a time, there was this monkey, right? It's weird, right? So why do it in music? Usually I mark this in green. So let's add green here. And we can make drawing arcs like this. So we'll kind of do this big arc right here. So let's say I think this first phrase it kind of ends here until we get to kind of this area right here. So we can already see that it's not the typical 4-measure phrasing, but it's actually like 6 measures. And we can also make smaller phrasing. So I think right, kind of starts here, maybe ends somewhere around here, and then right, it kind of continues to go and connect over this whole 6-measure phrasing. We can do it for the next section here, but as you can see, there are numerous ways that you can notate different changes in phrasing, where we want to go, etc. But the idea is to mark it down and have that idea in your mind before you even pick up the instrument, so you really know what it sounds like, where this section is going. And that way it primes our brains to be in the right mindset and seek our goals effectively. I'll give one last example. So contact point. At the beginning, I want to have good contact point. Start from the string, pull the string horizontally in order to get the good resonance that I want from the string without having to excessively push down. We can see here that this section is both piano and espressivo right here. Very clearly you can tell right there. So we essentially need to be dramatic and resonant, but it still needs to be quiet, which requires us still even more to not use as much weight. So if you try to slow the bow down too much because it's too quiet, the string will crunch and give us a nasty sound, especially since this is essentially a double stop passage. So one way I kind of notate it to remind myself so I don't have to keep accidentally starting with not good contact point here. So I'll kind of mark it down a little like that. And really you want to kind of keep writing these things down so you don't have to keep trying to remember this copious amounts of information, unnecessary information, where you could have just written it down instead of trying to remember all the mistakes that you did, because you probably make tens, hundreds of mistakes per practice session, but you don't have the brain capacity to essentially remember each and every one of them. Now that we've made a detailed plan, we'd actually start picking up the instrument to play. However, I also wanted to talk about certain techniques that you could do to improve sections that you might encounter, like the midsection of the Brahms down here. Therefore, I would like to consult the Technique Bible, or in other words, Schroedick, The School of Violin Techniques, books 1 through 3. Jokes aside, there are a few others like Karl Flesch or Kreutzer, but I think Schroedick has numerous etudes that can really help your practice sessions. So, for example, let's say I want to improve my string crossing for the midsection. Well, we can take a look here at exercise 4, this one right here, and we can see that it's a really good exercise for string crossings. It's a good way to practice your string crossings, loosen up the wrists, and it can even be used in warm-ups before attempting to tackle a section like the one in the Brahms, and it helps a lot with your ease in this section. So let's just try and play this section here, right in the middle here, as I'll kind of mark right here, like so. And so let's just try and practice that without having practiced the string etude. So, okay, as you can see, I kind of have some issues with the string crossings, and there are some intonational issues too, but we can worry about this at another time. So let's try and go back to the string crossings right here, and then kind of practice, really go through it, and do it with a sense of, like, as if you're practicing a concerto or something similar to that. So let's just try it. Okay, so now I'm going to try and play the Brahms again. Obviously, this typically requires a little bit more, patience and practice with it, but just for kind of brevity's sake, let's just see if anything has changed. Right, okay. So obviously, perhaps you noticed a difference or perhaps not. This type of practice does take a while, but it will strongly solidify the section deeper into your fingers and allow a sense of ease in the section that would otherwise feel difficult without the strong foundation. So that's all I have as a brief explanation to my exercise methods. This kind of practice does take a lot of time, but the rewards that come during your performance are well worth it. Thanks.